Good night, everyone. This is Evangeline Byers coming to you with a video to discuss the issue of the Taylor Law. So the past few days have been interesting over at Local 100 and dealing with our members and what's going on with the Taylor Law and comments being made about the Taylor Law. And so this video is to respond to Mr. Tramell Thompson's comment that I must not understand the Taylor Law when I was talking about the president of Local 100 calling for a shutdown of the system if the transit authority continues to assault our members with by way of DANs, disciplinary action, in the way they're handling us at 2 Broadway, and the fact that um, we have no support from our union. And so I just want to get into what it is that this video is addressing. So if you remember in 2005, for many of us, we were not here working at transit, but we were students. We were working at other agencies or other jobs. And there was a strike that took place where it shut down basically the city, and you had to walk to wherever you wanted to go because the TW Local 100 had went on strike against the MTA for trying to the implement Tier 6 and other contractual agreements that they were not in agreement with. And due to the fact that the transit authority was insistent that this was what they were going to do, they went to court, tried to get an injunction. That didn't work. And as we know, when injustice becomes when injustice happens, when injustice becomes law, then it's our job to resist, right? We have a duty to resist. And so I want to get into this discussion about the Taylor Law and what happened, right? So the Taylor Law does say that we don't have the right to strike. However, in 2009, after all of the penalties were imposed due to the strike, Roger Toussaint continued to fight back against this unjust ruling and decision that had come down from the courts, which denied their injunction. And then, as they were striking and going against the transit authority because they had no other recourse due to the fact that transit was violating again the rules of collective bargaining, of negotiations, and therefore they had to do something. And the answer to that was striking. And what happened was there were penalties imposed on the union. We lost dues checkoff and created a financial hardship for the union. But this was really done to break not only TWU, but the labor movement in New York City as a whole, to show all surrounding labor unions that if you do strike, this will be your fate, right? And to an extent, it has had its perfect work. We have not seen any type of strike happen in New York City to the tune of what happened when the MTA when TW Local 100 went on strike at the direction of Roger Toussaint. Um, well, under the leadership, not the direction, but under the leadership of Roger Toussaint. And so there was a ruling that came down from the International Labor Organization. I'm going to bring it up for you because I want you all to see what it is that I'm talking about. But first, I'm going to show you the article that, excuse me one second. Hmm. Give me a second. So I'm going to show you an article that addresses exactly what it is that we are discussing, because it's important to understand and for this to be in context. If you look in the comments, you'll see that I also, in the comments, put the decision there because I want you all to be able to see it. Okay, share screen. See, so you can see the screen. Okay, that's not what I want to show. Okay, so it's blocking my sharing of the screen. Let me see. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. So here goes the article. United Nations agency says bus and subway workers had a right to strike. So in 2009, Roger Toussaint and the International, at the direction of Mr. James Little, who was the international president at the time, they together sued, well, filed a complaint with the International Labor Organization so that they could hear their argument and rule and hope to get a ruling in their favor about the Taylor law being unconstitutional. And so, as you see, it has on the front page of the Daily News, Roger Toussaint in full display saying that there is a victory that we got this ruling from the ILO. However, international, even though it is on their on the international's website, right, about this ruling, they have never enforced it. And so let's look at the decision. And I'm going to read the decision to you because you have to understand that this is very important. This all hinges on when we talk about us having the right to strike and what that means to us as workers, that TWU Local 100 is not being forthcoming and they're hiding the truth about the Taylor law, right? So, so what it says here is this was published November 16th of 2011. Mr. James C. Little, who is the president of the Transport Workers Union International, announced today that the Committee of Freedom Association of International Labor Organization has found that New York law banning and penalizing public worker strikes violates fundamental worker rights protected by the international law. This decision upholds a complaint filed in 2009 by Little and former Local 100 President, International President Roger Toussaint. And now International Vice President Roger Toussaint. The ILO found, which is the International Labor Organization, found that the outright ban on public sector strikes under New York's Taylor Law, as well as punishment it imposes on illegal strikes, including fines, loss of dues checkoff, and imprisonment of union leaders, violates the freedom of association protected under the ILO Conventions of 87 and 98. The committee recommended that the U.S. government take steps aimed at bringing the state legislation through the amendment of the relevant provisions of the Taylor Law into conformity with the freedom of association principles, so that only one, public servants exercising authority in the name of state, and two, workers of essential services in the strict sense of the term, may be restricted in their right to strike. The ILO also urged that the government make measures without delay to ensure that the union is fully compensated in respect of the sanctions and the withdrawal of dues checkoff, and to take steps for the compensation of Mr. Toussaint for his 10-day detention and the additional sanctions imposed against the striking workers. So understand that a decision came down from the International Labor Organization, which governs workers' rights in the United States and internationally, right? It's an international convention treaty that all countries who are part of the United Nations fall under the ILO. They basically hand down the rules, and what they have ruled is that a part of the convention treaty is that striking is a human right. And so what we have found is, excuse me, sorry. What we have found is that this union continues to violate that order by not enforcing it. And let me explain. So John Samuelson, who was the president of Local 100 after Roger Toussaint, knew that the ILO had ruled that the detention and the penalties and fines that had been assessed to the leaders in the top four and the workers who went on strike, that all of those penalties should be returned to them. However, that never occurred because the Gang of Five never took this order from the International Labor Organization and enforced it in court. And because they never took it to court and they never enforced it, this is why you hear people like Mr. Thompson say things like, she doesn't understand the Taylor Law. No, I fully understand the Taylor Law, but I understand that the Gang of Five, who is headed by John Samuelson, Tony Atano, now John Chiarillo, Arthur Swartz, and Dennis Engel, that whenever you see there's inaction legally, anything that will impact and affect our union for the greater good, they do not take action. And they did not take action here, and they still have not taken action to enforce the order from the International Labor Organization ruling that assessing fines and penalties and stopping us from being able to strike is a problem. And the fact that John Samuelson has not enforced the order shows that he's a union buster, that he's masquerading around as this great leader of the international union when he failed to enforce an order from the International Labor Organization that would have brought back millions of fines of revenue of fines to those who were penalized, such as Roger Toussaint, and for all the workers who were fined 2 days for every 1 day that you struck, you would have gotten that money back. However, John Samuelson's inaction is the reason why people walk around our union rehearsing that we do not have the right to strike. And so what I'm saying is that this is a problem. And it's the reason why the transit authority is doing what it is that they're doing, is because of the fact that the Gang of Five with John Samuelson, John Chiarillo, Tony Atano, who's on the payroll now as an advisor to the union, Arthur Swartz and Dennis Engel, all have failed to act on behalf of the members of Local 100. There is no reason why they did not enforce that order, except for the fact that they do not care. And they don't want to do anything on our behalf. Right? So as we continue to get hammered by the MTA, while their disciplinary machine goes unchecked, while we're fighting for real wages and benefits in step with the time that we're in now, they want to tell you that you do not have the right to strike. John Chiarillo is absent. You can't find him anywhere. So I want us to be very clear that what I feel is taking place, or what I see and know is taking place, is that the Gang of Five wants confusion. They want a back and forth, ping pong of back and forth about foolishness. When the real issue is, will you have the right to strike? Or do you have the right to strike? Right? Do you have the right to strike? Striking under the International Labor Organization is a human right, and you have a right to exercise it. That's how you check the employer. And TWU Local 100 wants to tell its members that they do not have the right to strike, and that they're not going to do that because there'll be penalties and fines imposed, right? But while your health and safety is jeopardized. And so I want you all to read the documents that I placed in the comments. I want you to look at the Taylor Law. I want you to look at it. Because under the International Labor Organization's ruling, we do have the right to strike. We do have, we are due back the fines that were assessed against all of the workers and Roger Toussaint and the top three at the time, who were also fined for their engaging in the strike. So this is a very serious thing. And you cannot be a labor leader and take the position that you wouldn't shut it down. As president of Local 100, option is always on the table. We can take the penalties and the fines, but can you get back loss of life? There were laws when the longshoremen struck. There's Taft-Hartley. But guess what? They struck anyway. And he made it very clear. He did not care about the fines or the penalties or whatever it was that they were going to assess. That his people were due a raise, and a real raise at that. And they walked away with the real wage, real raises, in step with the time that we're in now. So as we continue to take losses, the position of Local 100 under John Chiarillo, under International President John Samuelson, which is the same position that uh, Tony Yatano took and now John Chiarillo will take, is that we do not have the right to strike. However, we're watching in real time strikes happen across the country, in New York, in New Jersey. People are striking to hold the employer accountable. We cannot continue like this as a union. And so it's very important to understand that as the president of the union, that option is always on the table. As the president of the union, John Chiarillo has a right to exercise a strike. He has the right to exercise job actions and to do whatever it is that he needs to do to keep his workers protected. So if he calls for a shutdown, if he calls for safety stand downs, when it comes to safety, all work stops if it's unsafe. We have to ensure that our members make it home to their families, that our health and safety is not being jeopardized. And so I want you all to just read the ILO ruling. It's on the international website. Anyone can go and pull it for themselves and read it and see what it is that it says. And that John Samuelson, who is getting ready to go to International Convention in Vegas, and the people of Local 100, all of the delegates and the people that go down there, they're going to vote against their own interests. They're going to vote against their own interests. And so we want to understand, I want you all to understand what it is that we're talking about, what it is that I'm talking about when it comes to striking. And I want you to understand that when they go to the International Convention, we want to make sure that people are voting against John Samuelson, not continuing to keep the same leadership in place over and over again that is working along with management to undo us. Somebody put in the comments that a strike isn't going to stop assaults. I did not say a strike is going to stop assaults. I want us to stay focused on what it is. The president of your union is supposed to show up for you. The president of your union is supposed to show up for you if you are assaulted. He's supposed to make sure that you are not disciplined if you are assaulted. When your union reps are rendered powerless, the full weight of the union is supposed to come in and do something on your behalf. You have more of a beef with my defending the members and pushing for our protections than you do with a president of a union who you did not vote for, who was forced on you, who, when something happens to you, does not show up. You have a leadership that has a ruling from the International Labor Organization that they refuse to enforce. Instead, they want to tell you over and over and over and over again, over and over and over and over again, that you do not have the right to strike. That is nothing that they can do. And what do we see happening to this union? Since John Samuelson came into leadership over 15 years ago, the concessions and give back over and over and over and over again. It's important that we all understand what is at stake. And it's important for us to understand that TWU Local 100, under the direction of John Samuelson, who is the international president, controls the puppet strings at Local 100. He has two attorneys, Arthur Swartz and Dennis Engel. He has Arthur Swartz and Dennis Engel, who he puppet masters. He has John Chiarillo as a figurehead. They tell him what to do, and he does it. And Tony Itano just sits by and collects a check and makes sure that the racket that they have going continues. And that the members, we just fuel this engine by dues. But they block you from being able to become shop stewards, to participate in your own union. So I want you all to be very clear. The Gang of Five, John Chiarillo is the appointed president at the direction of John Samuelson. Yatano is sitting there again as the advisor directing the whole play. This is why you hear no executive board reports. There is no pushback from anyone on the executive board. E-board reports have become almost non-existent because they do not want to make the president upset. They're scared to get written up or brought up on charges. But I want the members to understand that we have a problem here. And if you plan on doing 25 years here, the union has the duty and the obligation to take that order to court and enforce it. They have a duty to take it to court and enforce it. And so, do your homework. Read what it says. And so if you don't have the right to strike, if there's nothing you can do against management, all they can do is yell and scream and say that they're sending letters to Jan Lieber. So it's very important that we understand what's going on. So we're going to continue to forge ahead. We're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to keep the pressure on, and we're going to continue to keep you informed. We're going to continue to keep you informed and help you to understand that this union is not acting in our best interests. They're not acting in our best interest. So go in the comments, click, read the International Labor Organization's ruling. Read the news article by the Daily News, where they so cover, which is Pete Donahue, who used to be at TW Local 100, working against us. But in this vein, when he worked for the Daily News, when he was a writer for the Daily News, wrote a press piece on the ruling from the ILO in our favor. So read it. Do your own research. Google, look it up. And you'll see, over the past 15 years, under the direction of John Samuelson, the leader of the Gang of Five, this is what has been done. So your VPs can do nothing if they're not supported by the president and the international. Right? So it's very important for us to understand that John Chiarillo has a duty as the president of Local 100 to step up and do something on behalf of the membership. And remember, everyone, we are stronger together. Share the video. Make sure that you get the ILO ruling and read it and understand that this union, under the leadership of John Samuelson, never enforced the order that would have brought back millions in fines to our leadership, for those who were in leadership, and also millions in fines to our leadership and also to the members of Local 100, the workers who were fined at that time as well. They would have got back their penalties and everything else. And this basically does not help the union advance forward in any way. So thank you all for taking the time to listen. Please read the ruling, look at it, and make sure that you remember we're stronger together, and let's continue to fight and push forward.